Okay, good morning, everybody. We're here for the Economic Development Committee hearing. It's March 25th, 2026. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. We're in room 423. I'm Ikaika Hussey. We're joined here with Chair Iligan, Representative Temple, and Representative Gideon. And we are going to start, we have rules to read. Where did this go? Okay. Because morning hearings must adjourn prior to floor session, not all testifiers may have the opportunity to testify. In that event, please know that your written testimony will be considered by the committee. For those on Zoom, please keep yourself muted and your video off while waiting to testify and after your testimony is complete. The Zoom chat function will allow you to chat with the technical staff only. Please use the chat only for technical issues. If you are disconnected unexpectedly, you may attempt to rejoin the meeting. If disconnected while presenting testimony, you may be allowed to continue if time permits. Please note that the House is not responsible for any bad internet connections on the testifier's end. In the event of a network failure, it may be necessary to reschedule the hearing or schedule a meeting for decision making. In that case, an appropriate notice will be posted. Please avoid using any trademarked or copyrighted images, and please refrain from profanity or uncivil behavior. Such behavior may be grounds for removal from the hearing without the ability to rejoin. Okay, we're going to start with SB 3169 HD1, and we have a kind of a habit or a custom of standing up and saying that you stand in your testimony. We'll assume that everyone is standing on their testimony, so I'm simply going to ask if there's anyone who would like to testify this morning. Please come to the podium. Any volunteers? No?
Does that include if we've done written?
Sure, please.
Sorry. First time in front of this committee. Michael Kane on behalf of DLNR. We stand on our written testimony. And in essence, we're just asking that one word be struck. And there's been so many drafts, I wonder if this is just a shadow from previous drafts. And that would correct the fact that Office of Planning is not a regulatory agency and doesn't actually have rules to permit programs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other testifiers? Anyone on Zoom? Okay. For the record, for this measure, we have 8 testimonies in support, 2 in opposition, and 2 with comments. Okay. And if there's no further testimony on 3169, we'll move to SB 3320.
Wait, question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
Excuse me.
all good.
Any questions from the committee?
I have one. Thank you. Could you come up, Yolanda? I was considering what to do here because DBED is supportive of having this pilot program. I just wanted to ask if you could really expand and clarify what sort of work and services and enforcement that needs to be addressed with this pilot project that DBED may not be able to support and implement?
The DBED?
Are you talking about SB 3169?
Right. I'm trying to understand the question. Office of Planning is a planning body, obviously, that can take a coordinating role in bringing the different parties together. They're learning how to implement projects currently in Waikiki, although that hasn't been a historical feature. It's the permitting part that a lot of us had concerns with. And a lot of the written testimony, I think it might refer to previous drafts. There was a draft of this bill that would automatically exempt the project from all environmental regulations, which ourselves, OHA, many agencies had concerns with. This draft changes it to could be or maybe, which is consistent with the law. Does that answer your question?
It does.
All right.
It sounds like planning was in the design or planning stage of this effort, but you're talking about implementing the permitting, and also you had concerns about some of the exemptions that's in the pilot project.
Correct. Like the original bill would automatically exempt everything. Now it's an option, it remains on the table, but it's not a carte blanche exemption from environmental regulations.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Is that
Thank you.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Is there anyone here that's working on this project? Can you come up?
Chair, Vice Chair, members. Ken Chung from Oceanet. We are the Monteguchi Missions engineering consultants.
Thank you, Ken. The last time we spoke about this, I asked you to reach out to Shifty and ensure that there is some working collaboration with this pilot project. Can you give us an update regarding that?
Chair, I don't have exact details. I know that we have had people who talked to Shifty, and there was some back and forth and agreement on the changes to the language that they accepted.
And that's one of the reasons why we made it an option, is to figure out what could be worked out with Shifty
Yes, sir.
as well. So just for the record, I wanna say that Oceanet is working with Shifty and wanna make sure that Shifty is on board with this project, and
Sure.
we're not just exempting any sort of historic or environmental concerns.
Yes, and we are also, we will also comply with federal regulations, including Corps of Engineers permits, Fish and Wildlife, National Historic, as well as state historic, as well as state kapa'akai, which is a cultural requirement.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dionar, can you come back one more time? You've heard from Oceanet regarding the permitting situation. Do you have any concerns there?
If you look at page 3 of our testimony.
Yeah.
So we've been working with the mission and with Oceanet for about the past 5 years. And the sandbags you see are emergency permits that we've been issued. I have pictures. The bottom of the second page, below the cemetery,
Yes,
you see really a huge collection of big fat turtles
I do.
resting there. And whenever I ask, what are you gonna do about the turtles? I get a nervous laugh in response, and nobody really knows. So my question is, federal permits will require you to address the issue that there are honu there, and I don't know what the plan is.
Okay.
And I don't have any ideas myself, honestly, beyond pick up the turtles and move them, which isn't legal. So in terms of permitting, there's a pathway. I just don't know how the mission gets past federal regulations. So to be bluntly honest.
I see. So there's concerns about the honus and federal
Right.
regulations and process
Because
on
you
how
would need
to.
a Army Corps of Engineer permit,
Yeah.
and that would trigger further review based from Fish and Wildlife Service.
Mhm.
So
I wanna say I kind of went through this similar situation with Fuhiki Boat Ramp, and there was concerns with Fish and Wildlife regarding that sea turtle habitat. So I'm considering some amendments on DLNR handling the permitting aspect of the pilot project, but it sounds like from what you're telling me is that the collaboration between the federal permits and the state permits is going to be one of the things that we need to keep in mind.
I myself do not see a clear pathway forward for the mission beyond retreat. So I just need to be bluntly honest, but there are other people looking at it. So the fact that I don't see a path forward beyond retreat doesn't mean one doesn't exist. That also probably means you don't want to put the permitting in my office.
I see, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
thank you for your concern. Oceanet, could you come up? So you heard DLNR.
Yes.
Do you have any thoughts there?
The honus are a concern, and I think the only way, assuming we get a permit, the federal permit, is to only work when the turtles are not there. I think that's the only way through it.
Educate me. The federal, regulations are gonna trump over whatever state
Oh, no.
exemptions we have,
No,
or
they're in addition to.
they're in addition to?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so we must comply with them,
Yes.
no matter what we put in this measure, we
Right.
still must comply with the federal regulation.
Correct.
Okay, so we're not exempting anything with this measure when it comes to federal regulations.
Correct.
I just want that to be clear.
And could I add one thing?
Sure.
The reason why, I mean, we're trying to protect a historical and cultural landmark, the temple. And that's where the emergency structures are. But that picture illustrates why it's urgent, because that 8-foot escarpment of just red clay is coming down. We're losing several feet each year on that little patch of sand that the turtles are. And then there's tombstones, burials above that. So we're watching a environmental crisis happening. So we're trying to help the turtles. We're trying to restore the beach. So that's
Well, thank you for
why
your
we're
work.
here. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Any other questions? I had a question, maybe it's, I guess for Oha? Oha? I was wondering, first of all, if you could summarize your organization, your agency's perspective on this, and also if you could provide some guidance on where the, I guess, the difference is between federal statute and state statute with regard to this question.
Yeah, and I apologize for coming in late, came from another hearing. So our primary concern is with allowing some of these exemptions like environmental review, the conservation district permits, and chapter 205, which is their shoreline protections. These typically they were established for these broad types of considerations, and we're concerned with this narrowing to this one specific project. We understand all the cultural significance of this place, and it's obviously heartbreaking to see, but at the same time we have to acknowledge that there's little we can do with Mother Nature. We saw what happened in the past couple of weeks. It's kind of a hard battle to fight, and we're just, here living in her world. So we have to kind of go within these bounds that we have. So our concern is that this type of legislation that's narrowed to this type of project will be replicated and more exemptions occur. And then we're looking at just stepping outside of the bounds already of what we have in place that is meant to help protect our resources. The other issue that OHA had was just we do appreciate a lot of the work that they've done with SHPT and that type of work. We just had an amendment to incorporate back the SD1 amendments to that section because it also included a little bit more, like with an archaeological monitoring plan that got removed, I think unintentionally probably, and then asking for the Office of Foreign Affairs to be consulted a little bit earlier. And then as to your question about federal and state, federal jurisdiction, the state just cannot, the state doesn't have authority to exempt from federal authority. So anything that the state does, we can never really exempt from federal authorities. If they wanted federal type of exemptions, they would have to seek those at a federal level. The difference in those reviews is one, under the current administration, there's been a lot of changes under how NEPA is applied, which is the national version of our environmental laws. And so there's less guidance there, so it's less rigid. Hawaii has a more rigid structure, which we should because of our unique island landscape. And I think we have these separate types of protections in place because of our unique island structure, which is different than a continental one.
So to summarize, NEPA in this case is an additional hurdle, but it's sort of a lower hurdle. It's a less rigid hurdle.
In a sense.
The state law is actually
Say that.
more, it provides more protections.
Yeah, and it's not clear whether that would be triggered. I know with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, because of the turtles and the Army Corps, there are some triggers there for some federal reviews. Whether NEPA would be included is, yet to. I couldn't say on that, but yeah, typically that's less of a hurdle.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions from the committee?
I just wanted to ask one more. Oceanette, can you come up? I think we need to just emphasize the purpose of why we're even doing this. This is a this is preventing coastal erosion that's happening at this bay. And I think you got into it with the burial grounds that are already falling due to the erosion. And also, there's a highway that's a main thoroughfare for economic development in this region. So the need is there to address the concern of this coastal erosion. If you could emphasize the main purpose of what we're trying to do, I would like to hear more of that.
Understood, Chair. I can sum it up in two elements. One is we're trying to preserve a cultural and historic landmark. And secondly, we're trying to save the shoreline. If we retreat, and I think there are many cases where retreat is very appropriate, but if we retreat from here, there's nothing but red dirt that's gonna fall into the ocean. There's no beach to save. In fact, the last 8 years or so, there's been chronic brown water that's pretty much smothering the sea life. So we think that we can save the beach, stabilize the shoreline, and have a sandy beach for the turtles and for visitors and residents.
So doing nothing to me is not an option. We need to do something.
I agree.
And I appreciate this pilot project moving forward. Let's do our best to move forward while preserving our environment and our cultural resource.
Thank you, I agree.
Okay, thanks. Any further questions? All right, let's move then to SB 3320. For this measure, we have 9 in support, none in opposition, 1 with comments. Would anyone like to testify on this measure? Please, and please make sure you introduce yourself.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Anela Akana of ADC, and I'm the new Food and Product Innovation Network Manager, and we stand in support of our measure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Please.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Esther Reichert on behalf of Department of Agriculture and Biosecurity. We stand on our written testimony in support of this bill.
Thanks. Any other testifiers? Anyone on Zoom? Okay, any questions?
I have one.
Sure.
ADC, could you come up? We have language in this bill regarding the FPINs, and we also added language in another bill that's an enterprise zone bill to have FPINs be eligible for that program. This language right now explores that idea. Is there anything else that needed to be considered that's within that enterprise zone?
Well, part of the FPIN is definitely from the education to export, and so the foreign trade zone and the is all part of that, the pathway for the FPIN.
Okay, so I guess more exploration would be good.
Yes.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions? Okay. Move to SB 2376 HD1. For this measure, we have 8 in support, 2 in opposition, 5 with comments. Would anyone like to testify in person? Anyone on Zoom? Oh, please, go.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Nahalani Parsons on behalf of Hawaii Renewable Fuels Coalition in strong support of this measure. We just want to highlight that, right now, renewable fuels require incentives in order to grow, and we really don't have anything. And the part of it, the conversation we've been having a lot lately is like we have goals for 2045 or in the future, but we really need to, these things take time. So we really need the tax credit today because some of this build out and expansion will take 5 to 10 years, and that's why we really see the significance of it. And we appreciate the committee for hearing this measure. Our testimony does include 2 proposed amendments. One for consideration is to expand not just to the renewable feedstocks that we grow here locally, but also those ones that we bring in and we use for local production. The reason being is that some of our farming communities need to see the sort of market in operation in order to then dedicate their land to expanding out to grow renewable fuels. So it's kind of seeing that system in place and the concept at work that then helps them, build it into their long-term goals and plans. And the other addition is the additional SAF credit. The reason for that is really that when you look at producing renewable fuel, renewable diesel, that's what the producer will make. And then it takes one more step on top of that, as you know, to get to sustainable aviation fuel. You have to then blend the renewable diesel with the conventional jet fuel. Right now it's approved at 50% blends. That additional step costs more. And that's why we're asking for the additional credit to be considered, because the process takes that one additional step, and we want to be able to incentivize producers to produce SAF because it'll make the most meaningful impact on our greenhouse gas emissions. That'll make a difference for us today. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you.
Available for questions.
Thanks very much. Please introduce yourself.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Nasha Chando for the Hawaii State Energy Office, and we stand on our written testimony providing comments. I'll be here if you have any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually,
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Noni Toledo representing Hawaii Gas. Hawaii Gas is in support and has testimony to that effect. Just a little bit of history and clarification. So the production tax credit was created probably about 15 years ago. It had a grandfather clause, so it sunset. And then about 5 years ago, it was reintroduced in order to promote renewable biofuels for firm renewable electricity. Since then, there have been very little firm renewable electricity generation projects procured by Hawaiian Electric, and so therefore there has been very little use for renewable fuel. Also since then, there's this new technology for sustainable aviation fuel for transportation. So now you have uses of biofuels for electricity, for aviation, as well as now there's renewable biofuels that can be used to substitute gas in the gas pipeline. So there's actually 3 different uses, all with varying feedstocks. This bill is a good, very good bill because it does encourage local feedstock, it encourages local sales, it encourages local distribution. One of the amendments that was put into HD1, however, even though the bill contemplates a 10-year credit for a single project or a single taxpayer, if that is fully subscribed because of the cap for the state, which is proposed to be 20 million, the tax applicant can only roll over into 1 year. So they basically lose the other 8 years, which is possibly a disincentive, because when a developer or a biofuel producer proposes and costs out what it will cost to produce that biofuel, if there's no clarity, there's a lot of risk involved, and therefore they may not proceed with the project. Another possibly oversight in the bill is that there are various types of projects that can be produced. It's not just, one all project. And so there's, for instance, hydrogen that can be produced. There's renewable diesel, there's renewable gas, all with different technologies, and they all may have different projects. So the bill as written in this amended only gives a taxpayer one single credit that they're able to utilize, whereas they may have different projects. So for instance, if you look at renewable solar developments, a single corporation might develop different solar farms with different partners. In that case, the state and the federal would provide tax credits for each of those projects, so on a project basis. This only provides a tax credit on the taxpayer hierarchy basis. So in effect, that may lead to a consequence where there won't be more innovation by a single entity, so it'll be a one and done. So we would respectfully request consideration, perhaps in the committee report, for the next committee to look at amending that so that it's on a project basis versus on a taxpayer basis. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other testifiers, please?
Hello, chairs, vice chair, members of committee, Mark Inoue from PAR Hawaii. Thank you for hearing this measure. We support the intent of SB 2376 and appreciate the updates to HD1 as it would help support the renewable fuels production tax credit and give it that update. And it would really help further adoption for renewable fuels for our state. As kind of heard from other testifiers, you know, it would really impact other different sectors and some of those are hard to decarbonize sectors, including utilities, aviation, ground transportation. So as committed to this, PAR Hawaii, put $100 million in our facility to really help provide these fuels for our customers and eventually really helping the state meet its goals, decarbonization goals as well. We are collaborating with the Hawaii Renewable Fuels Coalition, so we really support their amendments in there. And if you have any questions, I'll be here for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Chris Bennett with Pono Pacific. We did submit written testimony in support and just point out there are a couple amendments in there we asked for as well, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ted Metros. I used to work for PAR Hawaii before being terminated on testifying on the renewable fuel tax credit back in 2024 and what was proposed to be $100 million. There have been a lot of misrepresentations in this bill. PAR continues to make them regarding production within the state. The state has very little capacity to produce the feedstock for renewable fuels here. Pono Pacific has completed their testing and they've only produced about 63 gallons per acre of fuel. They can produce no more than 3% of PAR's desired fuel amount. It's going to be way less than 1% of the total. As a consequence, it's going to have to be imported. All the renewable feedstocks are going to be imported. And to clarify that this is, the truth, PAR Hawaii has formed a partnership with two Japanese companies. In the press release, they're excited about importing and providing feedstocks to Hawaii. And with this bill, in fact, it's still included, you can produce it. It's still in page 3. Allowed production facilities within and outside of the state. They would be able to import not only feedstocks, but also renewable fuels. They're already producing renewable fuels in Japan. So this tax credit will go in part to Japanese companies, which is precisely what the Senate wanted to avoid with their initial amendments to this rule. There will be a few exceptions, but it really doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, Pacific Biodiesel, they are producing crops, they're producing sunflower oil to produce oil, but they don't need an extra $7 million, which is basically a government giveaway. They're already embedded, and contrary to the other representations, Pacific Biodiesel sold out all 6 million gallons of their material, representing only 1% of HECO's needs, and they sold it all to HECO. And they're already obligated under the Renewable Portfolio Standard to do it. Is Pacific Biodiesel or PAR Hawaii going to give those tax credits to HECO, to the airlines? And they want to convey that there's no other alternatives. There is another great alternative, and it's being widely embraced, and that is the Clean Fuel Standard. The Clean Fuel Standard is expected to cost 30 to 40%, 30 cents per gallon. This is going to cost $1.40 per gallon. And there's no means whatsoever of scaling. This is 20 million. The state needs about 100 times more. So it's going to cost the state $2 billion if you want to go down the tax credit path, something the state of Hawaii simply can't afford. So I would encourage you to veto this bill, kick it back. There's a lot of measures that can suffice it, particularly the Clean Fuel Standard.
Thank you very much. Any further testifiers?
Yes, if I can testify, please.
Go ahead.
Great, thank you. Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Mike Ewald, Executive Director of Energy Justice Network, speaking up for our members and member groups in Hawaii. As it turns out, many of the burnable fuels are actually worse for the climate than the fossil fuels that they would replace. This bill uses the GREET model, which makes biofuels look better for the climate than fossil fuels. However, leading climate scientists have exposed this model as flawed due to its incorrect evaluation of indirect land use change. Even where these fuels may be less harmful, it is still a bad idea because these so-called clean fuels are worse in terms of land and water use, toxicity, competition with food production, risks from genetic modification, and more. These not actually clean fuels are extra expensive because state law requires zero emissions from transportation by 2045. Burnable fuels are not zero emissions, so the plan is to do two major transitions in under 20 years. One from fossil fuels to biofuels and waste-based fuels, and then another to electrofuels that have the potential to be truly free of greenhouse gases. And you just heard from an earlier testifier that it would take 5 to 10 years just to ramp this up. That's the time frame in which this industry would have to be shut down to replace with electrofuels to comply with state law. So I'd like to highlight two recommendations if you are to move this bill forward. We hope you defer it, though. First is to remove the eligibility of fuels produced from trash and construction and demolition waste unless it can be demonstrated that the feedstocks have no greater concentrations of halogens or toxic metals like arsenic than the conventional fossil fuels or biofuels that they would replace. This bill references construction and demolition waste as a renewable fuel, yet the Hawaii Natural Energy Institute has documented that this waste has 200 times as much arsenic as clean wood. And second, the Senate EIG committee has wisely questioned other clean fuels bills in part because there's not adequate land or water available to grow any meaningful amount of biofuel within the state. It will be nearly all imported, as Ted Metros had also testified. We recommend that you limit this bill to supporting only in-state production of biofuels and only after demonstrating that land and water resources are unable to be used for in-state food production. So please defer this bill or at least consider these amendments. Mahalo.
Thank you. Any further testifiers? Questions?
I have one. Could I have the state energy office come up?
Yes.
Hi. Please state your name, title, and department.
Yes, Munasha Chando, and I'm a renewable energy analyst at the State Energy Office.
I wanted to ask you, with what's going on with the price of gas, how important do we try to figure out regarding policy to look at alternative fuels? I know this does not directly, I mean, it kind of does, but because consumers, well, anyway, I just wanted to ask you, with what's happening throughout the world right now and what we're doing with this tax credit, what's the linkage? And the other question is, with our current energy goals, with our energy renewable goals, how does this align to incentivize and accomplish those goals?
I will have to take those questions back, but we'll make sure to find the appropriate channels to communicate with your committee.
Okay, well then can you answer your testimony? You had some concerns.
Yes, in testimony, the main comments were to address the rollover. So HSCO is in support of many of the changes that have been made to this bill. But the rollover mechanism, which is page 5, lines 15 through 21, and page 6, lines 1 through 11, sort of creates uncertainty in terms of if there's going to be that backlog. And of course, HSCO defers to Department of Taxation and other appropriate departments on the ultimate impacts that this would have. But just the concerns of, years going on and there's credits that continue to be owed and there's a backlog on if people continue to claim that credit.
Have you talked to DOTAX yet?
I am not sure. I will see. Yes.
Have you considered a cap on the rollover?
So I think we do make note of that. So in our testimony, it says that HSCO defers to the respective finance committees on budget constraints and an appropriate cap level.
Okay, have you, I guess my question is, have you considered what that amount would be?
If we have, I have not had eyes on that, but that is something I can follow up on. So taking note to follow up on or to take the questions back on an appropriate cap level. And then there were two others. I might have to watch the recording again to see what those two others were.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And could you follow up on those questions that I asked earlier? Just send it over to my office.
For sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Renewable fuels,
Chair.
could you please say your name?
Nahalani Parsons, I'm Executive Director for the Hawaii Renewable Fuels Coalition.
Thank you. Regarding my question earlier, with
Yes.
what's happening with prices going up, how does this tie into some of those concerns?
I think any increased local production increases our resiliency, and that is really, really key. Again, a lot of people get fixated on whether it's 0.5% or 1%. It doesn't really matter. Any percentage of local production increases our resiliency and makes us, more stable in terms of not completely dependent on the global markets. So I appreciate that question. The second question.
I totally agree. The second question I think is for the state of energy department to answer, because they're the ones who's supposed to be keeping an eye on those goals and making sure that they have a wider aspect on all sorts of energy, not just renewable. My other question is the cap for the rollover. I wanted to get an understanding the justification to have a rollover, because not every tax credit has a rollover. What makes this the exemption?
I believe it's just to maximize the usage of what we have available, and so our goal is to, show progress according to the Navahine settlement on what we're doing to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So that would be as much renewables as we can get a hold of. So the rollover just helps us address that. That's why it's sort of in this particular bill versus others, is just so that we can continue expanding on the use of it. If we're maxing out on the 7 million right now as the current cap, but we actually are producing a lot more, that rollover would help us keep continuing to use it in the future years.
But how the budget works, it's a little bit different. Like that money, that carryover is used for something else once it's not used.
Absolutely.
So how would we try to?
How would you calculate what you know is available each year?
Yeah.
I think you could see if you had two producers they have to file a form in advance to show notice that they're going to apply for this tax credit. So you kind of had that forewarning. So you see what applications are going in, and then there might be capped at 7 million, and you have two applications. So then the cap's going to go up to 14 max if it even hits that, and then you would be able to calculate that for that year, knowing that you have the remainder 6 million. And then the next year, depending on the rollover, you would just have to start again with knowing that the state liability was 20 million, and then working back from the applications to see what the per producer is. So I'm not an expert on the finance committee's sort of tax credit approach, but that is kind of a policy decision for you guys to address.
That's like having all the applicants in our GIA requests having their GIA approved and not actually making a decision of what's important and what's to fund.
Totally. I think it's a lot about what is our capacity of our fuel producers here, and some of them have capacity to produce 60 million gallons and some can produce 6 million. So if the state's goal is to maximize that greenhouse gas reduction, then you want to just provide the support for as much fuel that we can produce locally as possible. So that would be why you would do it. But
So
I see your point.
you hit it in the nail when you said what the state energy office goal on reducing greenhouse gas. we need to understand what we're trying to aim for. And I think we can supply the credits that we need to meet that goal. That's why it was very important for the State Energy Office to answer that question, because if we're not subsidizing to help meet that goal, then we're not putting the action that we need to do to meet that goal. We have goals for a reason, is to accomplish them. So until that is factored out by the State Energy Office and figured out and shared to us and point out that plan, then it's hard for us to give you this latitude of these rollovers. I think we need to make decisions and allocate the funding that we can support to help the initiative that we believe in. So I do want to allow the finance committee to consider this rollover and consider a cap. But ultimately, they understand the finances better than we do. But we do support what you're trying to do. The other thing that was brought up was the possibility of importing the finished product from another country or even another state, and then applying the tax credit. I could see a scenario where initially we want to get out of, go into renewable, so we start off with supplementing. But is there, well, one, how accurate is that statement? And the second is, if that statement is accurate, is there a phase out to where it must all be 100% locally produced here in the state? What's the plan there?
I think to go back to the first part of, I know it's hard to import we import a lot of our food and we wish we grew a lot more locally, and the reality is we just have to import a portion of it. And when you're trying to build out the local feedstock growth, farmers really need to see the security of the market. And so without having the support, I like your idea about the phase out. So if yes, it's an imported feedstock, but it's an imported renewable feedstock, which is like leaps and bounds better than what we have now. So it would be increasing our renewable feedstock access to increase our renewable fuel production locally. Tax credit would only go to local production. It goes to local customers. It does not benefit anyone out of the state. It goes to our utilities that are purchasing the renewable fuel. It goes to our truck drivers. It goes to anyone that wants to use that renewable gas as well would benefit. So the benefit would stay within the state, even if the feedstock was imported. And then it just shows that market security to the farmers. They got to see that the system is in play, because they're making big decisions. And again, it's not a competition with food. It's meant to be an additional economic driver for farmers who can now make money off of a cash crop, or now can have a rotational fuel crop in between growing their watermelons and onions that helps them provide another source of revenue. So that's the goal there, but to really build that out to get to the scale, I do like your suggestion of a phase out. There's nothing written in the bill right now, but that concept is definitely within reason of looking at ways to do that.
So this clears up a couple things. I assumed that it was the finished product that was being imported. But what you mentioned, it's actually the feedstock. You're talking about the inputs.
Yes.
And that does make sense to have it some sort of rollout or phase. Because right now, I think there's definitely potential here. Do you know what the profitability looks like for like a single company? Because what I'm hearing is that there is a market for this renewable fuels. However, the actual production of them locally, there needs to be some sort of security from these farmers or local producers to actually ensure that they grow the feedstock and then produce the renewable fuels. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, do we need one company, 2, 3, 4 to, like, what does the market looks like to be able to sustain a company? Is it only, we know that we can't just have unlimited amount of producers. I would like to understand what the potential market could be, and maybe as the state help supplement and subsidize the initial producers until they can do it on their own. So that way we create an industry, support them in the early phase, and then at the end they mature and produce this. So has that research been figured out? Because I think that's crucial.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment, Chair. And although I don't have the research necessarily, but the bill welcomes multiple producers and incentivizes the market to grow. It's definitely the intent, because the bill has a 10-year time limit, 10-year sunset. So that is the intention, is that the market would grow and the costs would come down. And part of that is we're really at the cusp of it. Like, PAR is one of the fuel producers, I think will be 1 in 5 in the nation right now that's going to be producing SAF. And that's, we're right at the exciting starting point. The goal is grow the market, grow the producers, and have more options here available to us. And over time, that will reduce the costs.
So technically, if we're looking at 10 years at $7 million a year, we're looking at $70 million to have this incentive for renewable fuels, technically. So if we're looking at the max cap or everything else, is 70 million over 10 years enough to start out this emerging industry and them leading into maturity?
I'd say that's a great question, because we want to see the results, right? We want to see it be successful. And so we are working on whether or not the current calculation at the 0.85 calculates out. And I don't necessarily have the exact information today, but I will circle back with you on that one. I think we want to see as much effort go into this as possible. So our goal was originally, when we asked, was just the 75% of whatever the cap was. If the cap was 20 million, it would be 75% of that per producer. That would maximize and make a bigger impact. There was one interesting fact that I had, which was like, if we had the whole 20 million and we were using sustainable aviation fuel with the additional credit in the bill, because they do have to have that additional credit to incentivize that. There was we grow our greenhouse gas emissions by 1.4% a year in just naturally increased volume of air travel. And so that was the exciting part, is that if we turned on this tax credit and had access to it, we could literally stop the increase. So I know, again, we're talking about small percentages, but we're talking about things we've never done before. We've never stopped our increase in greenhouse gas emissions. This is what's exciting about the policy, is that we have the option. It gives us the option to literally stop the increase.
Well, provide us more information.
Sure.
I think there's work that needs to be done. I saw your amendments and I'm still mulling through it. So let's continue the conversation.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that.
Any other questions? Actually, Mahelani, could you stay up 1 second? Okay, the current tax credit, is it refundable?
The original draft of the bill, it was refundable. And forgive me, I have to double check in this HC one.
It's not, right?
I don't believe it is. I think they took the language out. It was in a prior version.
Okay.
I believe on the House side,
Yeah.
the HB 69.
Oh, it's still?
Oh.
Yes. Oh, okay, great, thanks. Thanks, Ted.
Yeah, so how you get to it is a question.
Okay, 1 second, please. And so, from your coalition's perspective, do you have any comments, I guess, about the ideas raised in other testimonies around including camelina and also construction debris as allowable feedstocks into qualification for this tax credit?
Yes, thank you for the question. We have asked, forgive me, it wasn't in my testimony, but it's one of our coalition members, Poto Pacific's earlier testimony did ask for camelina to be added. It's the list is not exclusive of it, but it's not stated clearly in there. So we, that would be a preferred amendment, would be to clearly state it in there. Camelina is the brassica family, it's related to canola, so it fits in there. I don't have any comment on the waste, construction debris, as I do not have any current coalition members that,
Okay.
so I'm not available to comment on that one.
I know that there's projects that are, that are interested in pursuing that sort of thing, so. Okay, thank you very much. And then can also please call PAR? Thanks, Mr. Inouye. My question is about feedstock availability. With your view on the market, and obviously don't disclose anything that's confidential.
Sure.
Can we grow enough to feed just into your production goals? And I guess the related question is, to what degree are imports of feedstocks really necessary?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. That's like the $1 million question. Can we grow enough feedstock here in Hawaii? And that's the work that's being done by Pono Pacific to really expand that research. Like, well, how much acres do we need to grow like camelina, for example? What is being done by Pacific Biodiesel, because they're expanding as well their types of crops for renewables as well. But the answer to your question is probably not. We can't grow all of that feedstock here in Hawaii. I mean, it would be nice to grow all of our food here in Hawaii. That'd be great too. But there was just not enough land to grow. However, it's going back to the chair's point, is that we can create a different economy here. Expand on that, and that's what we're doing with collaborating with ag, collaborating with the landowners, collaborating with airlines and ground transportation and the state as well. So it's this kind of collaboration is what we kind of like to see. Everybody's just kind of working together on that. And then the import question, that's what we're currently doing now, to import the renewable feedstock. Canola is coming from Canada, and that's going to be able to start our production locally here, the local production. In the next, we want to say fairly soon, that we're going to start producing renewable fuels here.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand. So the way that the credit is currently structured, would you be able to claim a renewable fuels tax credit using the imported canola from Canada?
We would be with the renewable fuels production tax credit, not this version here.
Yeah. Problem though, obviously, if we're doing the import approach, is none of that benefit goes to our local farmers, right? It's
and that's what we're trying to build out with the incentive here for the feedstock, with the low life cycle here.
Yeah.
Is really try to help develop that industry, give them that incentive as a farmer to grow these cover crops or canola or camelina. There's other things that are in the works, and this would give them that incentive for that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you all for your patience. Let's move then to the next item, the last item, SP 2925 HD1. For this measure, we have 9 in support, none with opposition, 2 with comments. Any testifiers on this measure?
Law Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Esther Riker with Department of Agriculture and Biosecurity. We stand on our testimony offering comments on this bill, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Any further testifiers? Anyone on Zoom? Okay. Any?
On Zoom, we have DLMR.
Okay.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Heather McMillan, DLNR. We stand on our written testimony and support. I'm here to answer any questions that you might have along the lines of the forestry side. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other testifiers on Zoom or in person? Okay, any questions from our committee? Okay, we're gonna recess.
Hello everyone, we are back from recess and we are gonna go to the top of the agenda, starting at SB 3169. And this bill establishes a 5-year coastal resilience pilot program for the preservation of Montokuji Bay. Members, I think we had a very lengthy discussion about this pilot project, and the concerns are valid, and we are gonna ensure that we follow all federal regulations in place. And so we're gonna move this forward as is. Any questions, concerns, comments? With no questions, concerns, comments, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
SB 3169 ST1 HD1, the recommendation is to pass unamended as is. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Tam?
Aye.
Representative Templo?
Aye.
Representative Yamashita?
Aye.
Representative Gedeon?
Aye.
Thank you very much. The recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to SB 3320. This bill establishes policies for the Food and Product Innovation Network. Members, we're gonna move this as is, and any questions, comments, or concerns? With no questions, comments, concerns, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
Okay, SB 3320 SD1, recommendations to pass unamended as is. Any votes in opposition? Any reservations? Okay, the recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to SB 2376. This bill expands the renewable fuels production tax credit. There is a lot of questions regarding this measure, and I want to work with the EEP chair in the future to figure out some logistical and economic development concerns, and maybe we can figure that out. And maybe we could work something out also in conference. But for now, we're gonna leave it as is, members, and continue the discussion. Any questions, concerns,
Comment, Chair.
comments?
Just,
Please.
in general, I think, it's no secret that tax credits have been an issue for me, but it's not from the standpoint that I oppose tax credits. I just believe that, some states today are not calling it tax credits anymore, and they're calling it what it is, and they're calling it tax expenditures. Because technically, that's what it is. We're taking money out of the budget and reducing it to fund this purpose. And when we use the tax code to do these types of things, there's very little oversight to meet those goals and things like that. So that's why I've had problems with using the tax code to push forward initiatives. I understand why the proponents of these types of measures do this, because it's the easiest to push forward. Just use the tax code to move it forward. But again, I just wanted to make that comment that there are a number of tax credits that are moving forward, and I think at some point the legislature should be looking at this from that perspective, that it is an expenditure, and because it's an expenditure, there should be oversight over these expenditures.
Thank you for your comment. I also believe we need to make sure that we know exactly how we're gonna spend our taxpayer funds and who we're gonna give it out to, and there is a plan for it all. And that's why I really wanna work with the EEP chair to figure out what that plan looks like and make sure that this program becomes successful and we grow a mature renewable fuels market here in Hawaii, which diversifies our economy. So there's gonna be a lot of work that's needed, and I am relying on not only the industry, but our state agencies to ensure that we're meeting these goals and policies that we set forth by the state. Otherwise, we shouldn't have these goals and policies if we're not even trying. All right, members, any other further comments? Vice Chair, with no further comments, please take the vote.
SB 2376 ST2 HD1, recommendations to pass unamended as is. Any votes in opposition? Any reservations? Okay, Chair, the recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. For the last measure, we have SB 2925. This bill establishes a tax credit for natural management of coconut I can't even say it. Help me out, guys. Rhinoceros. It's the Filipino in me. English is not my first language. Beetle tax credit. The chair recommends to add Department of Ag's recommendation in their testimony regarding requesting positions to cover the regulatory aspect of this bill. Also, technical amendments for the purpose of clarity, consistency, and style. After reading the Ag's testimony, we realized they need the manpower to be able to make this bill happen. So we're gonna add that in. Members, any questions, comments, concerns? No questions, comments, concerned. Vice Chair, please take the vote.
SB 2925 ST1 HD1 recommendation to pass with amendments. Any votes in opposition? Any votes with reservation? Chair, the recommendation is adopted.
Well, thank you, members. Our hearing is now adjourned.